The Twins have managed to do it again. This is, I think, the second time now since we started this podcast that me and Matt have recorded an episode, got off, and then went on and recorded another one within the next day. Um, they just don't seem to want to work with our recording schedule when it comes to their organizational plans. It's frustrating, but nonetheless, we are back after we just wrapped our hour and a half episode to talk about Kendry Rojas and Connor Prielipp. Both, well, Kendry Rojas is just called up now. Connor Prielipp is on the taxi squad and joining the team in New York for the series this week. I'm just gonna give you the floor, Matt, and let you kind of lay this out for the listeners here.
Yes, we already know Kendry Rojas is going to come up. He's going to be pitching out of the bullpen, and he's taking the spot of Cody Funderburk, who's going on the paternity list. I think the really interesting thing here is Connor Prielipp, as Eric mentioned, is on the taxi squad. And so far, there hasn't really been any reporting for why he's not being promoted. He's instead going to the taxi squad to then be promoted on Tuesday. And I've been thinking about it for the last, 20 minutes. And I think the main reasons this could be is A, they are planning to cut a guaranteed contract, a guy like Anthony Bonda, who's pitching on, fully guaranteed major league deal. They're planning for him to be the corresponding move, and they want to save a day or two of service time and salary for Prielipp, and instead just pay the guy that they're already going to have to eat the contract of. I think that's probably the most realistic answer. The other one could be they're trying to figure out it, it could be that they just don't know who the corresponding move is. And I think part of it too is that we don't know if Prielipp is going to be in the rotation or in the bullpen. My gut says they'll probably have him be in the bullpen just because that's the area that's struggling. The starters have been throwing well, but it's also possible that we have a starting pitching injury that we don't know about. It's possible that the Twins have seen enough of one of these guys and they're going to move them to the bullpen to give Prielipp some run in the rotation. I guess that's really uncertain, but Eric, what are we thinking overall about these promotions?
Yeah, so I think the one that I've really been trying to wrap my head around here since we got the news is Connor Prielipp, just because, like Matt said, we don't know if he's going to be starting or being a reliever. This is interesting to me because we're actually just talking right after we finished recording our episode about how Sim's the exact type of guy that is in a weird tweener spot. You're not really moving him into the bullpen at this point in his career. I don't really think that you would do that and expect any sort of meaningful uptick in stuff. That would suggest that he would really even take to a bullpen role, but you similarly can't send him down to AAA to figure it out. Like you could, yes, but would it just doesn't make any sense for him to go back down to the minor leagues to figure it out because he also hasn't really exactly shown us anything that needs to be figured out right now. He's just had some bad starts. That's just who Simeon Woods Richardson is. But you're not going to bump anybody else out of this rotation. I mean, Bailey Ober just threw a phenomenal 7 innings tonight. And even if they did still want to bump him, it would make no sense to bring Connor Prielipp up now, even to the taxi squad, because Ober just pitched, and that spot in the rotation probably isn't coming up for another 6 days with our off day tomorrow. You should not be bumping McAble, who has looked good so far and is scheduled to be the starting pitcher of Tuesday's game. But I don't really know how Connor Prielipp fits into this bullpen. We're already talking about how if Kendry Rojas comes up, one of the lefties has to go down. That's going to be Funderburk. We'll have to continue to watch that just to see, is this just we actually need Kendry Rojas for 3 games while Funderburk's on the paternity list, or if this is going to be a part of something bigger. The other idea would be that we do see Anthony Bonda go, and at that point, do we still leave both Kendry Rojas and Connor Prielipp up if they're both in the bullpen? I struggle to see how both these guys actually come up at the same time and fit onto this roster.
I mean, yeah, on one hand, it's tough because Twins already had left-handed relievers. and these are another pair of them. On the other hand, it's unclear that any of their left-handed relievers are any good, and these guys we think can be really good, even left on right. And so it's possible they're both the caliber of relievers where it doesn't really matter handedness, and it doesn't take much for them to be better than Funderburk and especially Bonda have been this year. So I'm pretty excited about it. I do think it's likely that both are just going to be in a relief role or kind of a pseudo relief, maybe 2 inning, 3 inning kind of role. But I think probably this Twins team is just seeing, what we've all seen the last few weeks and have come to the same realization this bullpen is just not up to snuff. And it's going to be the thing that holds back this roster. I do think it's really interesting. The Twins now have called up arguably their top 3 pitching prospects, and certainly their top 3 pitching prospects that were in AAA and of real consideration to make a big league roster. And having Morris, Rojas, and Prielipp all in the big league bullpen definitely raises the upside of that group considerably because those are 3 guys who could develop into being, seventh, eighth, ninth inning relievers, and that's something the Twins desperately need.
Yeah, I think what interests me here right off the rip too is what this speaks for the guys that didn't get called up. In the case of Zebby Matthews, I think it means that the Twins don't really view him as a potential bullpen candidate, which I don't entirely hate. I think even if his stuff plays up a tick or two and moves a little sharper in the bullpen, it's still not necessarily stuff that's good enough to be an elite reliever. I like committing him to staying as a starter if we got to pick one of these three. The other fascinating one, we already just talked about this earlier. David Festa should be back from injury soon, and he was a guy that I think me and Matt were both very, very likely chalking up to being a bullpen arm this season once he did get healthy. If Prielipp and Rojas are both here to be in the bullpen for the rest of the season, I don't really see how that could be the case anymore. I mean, it's not like we don't have room because somehow, as we've been trying to parse through all this, Garrett Acton still has a spot in the bullpen, and that seems to be relatively safe. Would be absolutely no heartbreaker for the Twins to DFA him or send him back to the minors. I don't know if he has any options, but I think this bodes well for Zebby Matthews and David Festa staying as starters. Whether or not that's the right decision to make or not, I think will truly be a time will tell type of decision. But that is probably the most initial read I'd get off of these moves.
Yeah, I mean, I do think someone has to stay as a starter, right? Like the Twins have been pretty lucky. They haven't had rotation injuries so far this year, outside of Pablo at the beginning of spring. But they need to have some sort of depth. And now, if we're moving all of Morris, Rojas, and Prielipp to the bullpen, and again, to be clear, we don't know that they're all going to be relievers. But if those 3 convert to short relief, really all that we're left with for starting pitching depth is, I mean, Zebby right now in AAA. There's not a whole lot else down there. Maybe John Klein could make a spot start. We also have a couple of intriguing guys in AA, but they're probably not considerations to come up and make a depth start. Eventually, you're hoping Festa comes back. Yeah, I agree. I think 2 out of these 5 guys need to stay as starters. Give us 7 real options to go to. Yeah, it's just a strange move, and I think the timing of it when we don't have a starting pitching injury really to me suggests that all 3 of these guys are going to be throwing in the bullpen. And yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how this works out. Again, I think this is the kind of move this Twins team needed, and I think it's been a while since we've recapped our prospects, and so it's probably worth giving listeners kind of the lowdown on what to expect for each of these guys. But Connor Prielipp has a fastball that's can be up to the mid to upper 90s. He usually is more mid 90s and then will occasionally touch like 98, 99. But the real calling card for him is just a devastating wipeout slider. It's one of the best breaking pitches in baseball. It is truly like a RPM monster, super tight, late break. It could be, 70 grade pitch. It could be really something that sets him apart. And he's at times lacked a third pitch, although he has developed a little bit more of a changeup. He has good action on it, but sometimes struggles to command it. He just is one of those guys that has always been effective, and you can see exactly why he's effective, but it's just been hard to keep him healthy over longer outings and for larger workloads. And so, definitely a guy that you can circle as a potential impact reliever if the Twins are indeed giving up on him as a starter. And then the other guy, Kendry Rojas, we saw him quite a bit in spring training, but another guy with a very good fastball, a lot of movement, and the real calling card for him is his changeup. His changeup is a true out pitch, something that he can throw in the zone. He can throw it below the zone. He gets swings and misses on it. And then his curveball slider thing is okay. It kind of has an early break on it. It's a little easy to see out of the hand, but it does get a lot of movement. It's definitely a distant third pitch, and the fastball has gotten hit around quite a bit. But I think he could, potentially bump up the velo a little bit and be another late inning arm. So for those two, super exciting, and definitely for the softest tossing bullpen in baseball. It adds a lot of heat to the group.
Yeah, I'm actually looking for bugs in my room right now because this is just what me and Matt talked about an hour ago when we were going through this bullpen to record our initial episode. And within the hour, the Twins had their answer, and it is exactly what we wanted. And to that, I begrudgingly have to tip my cap to Tom Polad and the front office of the Twins organization. They said this year matters to them. They said they want to win this year. They said that it's an important part of what they're hoping to build for. And this at least shows it. This is something bold. This is something I don't think we would have seen under a Derek Falvey regime. I don't even know if we would have seen it with the other Polad brothers running the team. Not that I'm saying that Tom Polad demanded this move, but I will say this is a surprising move that lines up with the Twins' objective of being good this year.
I will say, I mean, yes, it's a little bit surprising to see these guys up early season, and especially when we don't have injuries and they're just coming up as pure, replacements. Although I guess in the Funderburk sense, it's kind of a replacement, but it's not like they're exactly pushing these guys super quickly. I mean, Kendry Rojas was a fast riser last year. He made it to AAA with the Blue Jays shortly before getting traded to the Twins. He pitched some for the Twins down the stretch, was really bad, and then he pitched in spring training and a little bit to start this year. But he's definitely the fastest mover of the group, and he's still almost 23. Andrew Morris is 24.1, and Connor Prielipp is over 25, I believe.
I want to say we were looking at it as 25 and 3 months.
Yeah, and actually, now that I'm looking at this, I think my ages are outdated. Yeah, because Kendry Rojas is 23 and a half, and that would mean Morris is like 24.7, something like that. So, I mean, definitely guys who are on the right age trajectory that they should be debuting this year. There's no reason to keep them in AAA. I think it's just surprising that they're making such a big move here in April.
Yeah, 100%. And I think what's interesting about this to me is that they're happening in tandem because these guys have obviously been viewed very similarly in the minor leagues because they're both high upside, very high power lefty arms that we didn't really know if either of them were going to stick as starters. And I don't necessarily think that this is a death sentence for either of their starting careers. I do think it is for Prielipp much more than it is for Rojas. I also wonder if this might just be an entire philosophical shift 20 games into the season. So far, Derek Shelton has looked a lot more willing to ride his starters a lot longer than Rocco Baldelli did. We saw Bailey Ober throw seven tonight. We saw Sim, I think he threw seven in one of his starts earlier this year. but he hasn't really been buying into the whole idea that a pitcher should only face a lineup twice and be pulled before the third. And again, it's been met with very mixed results, but I do see a world, especially with Kendry Rojas, who, as Aaron Gleeman mentioned earlier, has been on the throwing every 4 days in shorter stint arc, the same way Travis Adams was last year, could come in here and basically just be a piggyback to starters that they want on shorter leashes.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I think the reason that Derek Shelton's let his starters go longer into games is less so that he has some philosophical difference in how he views starters, and more so, Rocco is working with the best bullpen in baseball. Derek Shelton has Justin Topa throwing the ninth inning. And so, I mean, if you're telling me, yeah, if you're telling me like as your bridge to the late innings, you can either have 90 pitches in, Joe Ryan go back out for the seventh, or you can have Garrett Acton throw the seventh. I would tell you, yeah, ride Joe Ryan. And that's a much different proposition than saying you can hand this ball over to Danny Coulomb or Brock Stewart or Louis Varland in the seventh.
No, it's definitely a fair take, but I think that can really only apply to half of our lineup here. If we're talking, would I rather see the seventh inning of Bailey Ober and Simeon Woods Richardson or Garrett Acton? That's becoming a legitimate debate for me and a legitimate conversation. And I think maybe that's just why they're making this move, is they understand that that is both a ridiculous conversation to be having and an untenable situation for the entire season to ride out on. They knew that this was going to need to happen at some point or another. So why not just, I mean, by all regards, both guys have been absolutely killing it so far. Make it happen now while they're hot so that we have both a better chance at keeping this season afloat and B, just seeing what we have. Knowledge is always power, and the sooner we see these guys in the major leagues, the more we know what we're really looking at.
Yeah, and these guys also, we talked earlier in this episode at length about Kalen Culpepper and got pretty heated about it. But I would say all three of these guys, it's a little bit different because they're older, they have more pro experience, and they're also starting pitchers. Well, probably relievers now, but they're pitching prospects. Uh, and I don't know how much I subscribe to this theory, but there was an article written probably 15 years ago saying there's no such thing as a pitching prospect. And kind of the idea behind that is at any given point, a pitcher can blow out their elbow, never be the same, and you've lost whatever value you thought you had in that guy. And so, as soon as you think a pitcher is ready, they are showing the tools that they need to succeed in the big leagues, they should be promoted because, waiting for a year or two and getting them to develop, you're just wasting bullets in the minors and you're just getting closer and closer to that eventual ligament snap that could end their career.
Matt Canarino, I'll never forget you.
Yeah, and so for these guys, they've all had success in the upper minors. They're very promising pitchers. They're a little bit older. All three of them have dealt with, well, except for Morris. No, he had injuries too. Yeah, all three of them have dealt with injuries in the last few years. So it makes sense to get them up to the big leagues as soon as possible while they're healthy, especially for, big league staff that really needs the reinforcements.
There's also the argument, and some people might get a little bit mad about this. I think it's easier to be a young pitcher in this league than a young hitter, mainly because hitters are a lot more kind of on their own, really on an island in terms of being mentally prepared for a game. You have to know your scouting reports. You have to know what you're looking for from each pitcher. You have to know what velocities they're sitting at. There's so much you have to do to be prepared game in and game out. For younger pitchers, there is a little bit, at least, of an element of, hey, I just need to make sure that I'm feeling good and my stuff is sharp, and I'm just going to hand this game to Ryan Jeffers or Victor Caratini. I'm going to sit there, I'm going to nod my head, I'm going to be an eager little pitcher, and I'm just going to let them guide me through this game, because that is another advantage of having these older, more established veteran catchers is they're going to be extremely helpful to these younger pitchers coming up in terms of working through a game, pitch sequencing, knowing what to throw to lefties, what to throw to righties. Just everything that goes into the strategic aspect of pitching is something that can really be shared in terms of a burden with their catchers.
Okay, Eric, I'm going to ask you, how many innings do you think is Kendry Rojas's maximum number of innings he's ever thrown in the minors? Again, a single season, what's he topped out at?
Can I ask how many seasons he's thrown in total in the minors?
Yeah, he's thrown one, two, three, four, five. This is his sixth season of pro ball,
Ooh.
and
I'm
he's
gonna
been a starting pitcher throughout
Yep.
all of it.
I'm gonna be generous. So we're gonna say minor league starters always go shorter, 5 inning average, and that's gonna be generous. Over 80. 80 innings is my guess.
His best is 84 in A ball in 2023.
Okay, that math was pretty sharp though.
Yeah, he made 20 appearances, 15 starts through 84 innings. And then he threw 62 and 2/3 in 2024 and 69 on the dot last year. So you can look at that. And last year, too, he made 19 appearances through 69 innings. He averaged less than 4 innings per start. Yeah, I mean, nothing here is really screaming starting pitcher to me.
No, absolutely. And I mean, Prielipp has been going a little longer in his starts, especially in AAA to start the season. But both these guys, when you talk about keeping them stretched out, they never really got to a point where they were ever stretched out in their careers in the first place. And that's because they already had these guardrails put up in terms of pitch limits because they do have this fatigue on their arms, and you really don't want to see that wear into them and create another big blowout injury. But when you have these pitch limits, it's really hard to actually stretch this guy out into what you could believably call a starter. And the more we talk about it, it all just sounds like the exact type of career path that Jawan Duran went down before he got to our bullpen.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up Connor Prielipp because last year, so Rojas 83 was his career high in innings pitched, and that was in 2023. Prielipp set his last year 82 and 2/3. But Prielipp, it took him like an extra 5 starts to get there. He made 24 appearances to get to that 82 innings. And so he was averaging, let me do the math quick, like 3.5 innings per start last year. Now, in 4 appearances this year, he's thrown 15.2 innings. So he's averaging 4 innings.
Not even at 4 and outing.
Yeah. So, yeah, neither are probably starting pitchers. And I think the Twins are probably coming to that same realization. And maybe they turn them into 1 inning guys. Maybe they just let these guys eat for 2 or 3 innings in the bullpen. Similar to like early career Joan Duran. I think a lot of people just remember closer Duran. Towards the end, he'd come in, he'd throw the ninth. That was his role. But that first season, when he came up, he had just converted from being a starting pitcher. He was still somewhat stretched out, and he would throw like 2 and 2/3, and then take a day or two off, and then do the same thing. And he was dominant, but he would throw longer stretches. And I think he got to the point where he was so good, where the Twins kind of decided they wanted him available for more games, and so they didn't want him throwing multiple innings where he'd then have to take a day or two off. I think definitely don't think Connor Prielipp or Kendry Rojas is quite at that level of pure stuff and domination. Maybe they get there, but I mean, it's possible the Twins just think they can do the same thing with Prielipp and Rojas and Morris and just let that trio, twice a week go out and throw 2 or 3 innings and just shove.
I do want to kind of go back to where we started out here, though, because I think we jumped over a little bit of the where exactly does Connor Prielipp go into this roster? Who's coming off this roster? We mentioned that it could be a whole multitude of reasons. There could be an injury that hasn't been announced yet. It could be a guy who's getting cut. I don't really buy into the idea that they just called him up because he's been so good and don't really know where he's going to go. But I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on this, because to me this is pretty straightforward. You're cutting Banda. You gave up some international free agent signing money for him. It sucks that you're getting out of it so early, but clearly there's a reason he was DFA'd. There's a lot under the hood that was just that what he has done this year, which is not good, is not going to get any better. That's the easier cut. Is this also just a quick yank for Cody Funderburk as well then?
Well, Funderburk we know is going on the paternity list, so at least in the short term, it's probably not a demotion for him. It's possible that when he comes back, the Twins then option him. I don't know if that'll happen, but Funderburk does have options, and also hasn't pitched well. He has like a 17% walk rate on the year. But Bonda, I mean, the Twins gave up $500,000 in international spending room, which isn't nothing. And he's coming off of a 3.08 ERA in 2024 and a 3.18 in 2025. But as we talked about at the time, his underlying numbers did not support near that ERA. And his strikeout rate's kind of been mediocre. He walks a lot of guys. And he's been, very closely monitored. He's pretty much a left-handed one-out guy, as much as that can exist now. He's kind of a loogie. He doesn't face a lot of right-handed batters. The Dodgers were very careful about limiting him. For a Twins team that has a bunch of left-handed pitchers, he doesn't really have a role, and his velocity's down 2 full miles per hour this season. He's still not getting strikeouts. The ground ball rate's up, and the walk rate's down. But I don't know, man. He currently has a 485 FIP and a 447 xFIP. He's 32 years old. He has a career ERA of 4.65 in 242 innings. I think the Twins might be willing to move on.
And they, by all means, should be, because, again, we're trying to be competitive, and we've seen that that's not even like an outrageous claim to make this season. We've seen this offense become decently high powered. We've seen the pitchers, the starting pitchers at least, actually perform to expectations and above in pretty much every situation. I think really what this might just mean is the Twins were even caught off guard by how good they were to start the season, and they're like, oh crap, we can actually do this, but we got to get moving on it.
Yeah, it definitely feels like they have some urgency, and that's good to see. Tom Pohlad's talked at length about how this is a really important season, and I think seeing the Twins lose their last 4 games, probably at least 2 of them were very much something where you can point to the bullpen being the issue in the loss. I have to imagine this is kind of lighting a fire under them, and it's pretty easy to look out in this very veteran, very soft tossing and underwhelming bullpen and say, we have some young guys who can bring a little bit more upside. Let's see what they can do. And honestly, like, it might be tough losing Bonda because you are clinging to the hope that he can be a low 3s ERA guy like he was with the Dodgers. But in all reality, that was playing way above his true talent. And all of the projection systems on Fangraphs has him at between a 4 and a 5 ERA. And that's super replaceable. And the one thing that he does that a lot of random veteran relievers don't have is that he can neutralize left-handed pitching. And when you have guys like Funderburk and Rogers and Rojas and Prielipp, that's no longer a strength. And so, letting him walk and eating the little bit of money he's owed, and then saying, if we need a veteran down the line, we have 6 guys sitting in AAA who can be mediocre veteran relievers. I think that's a very fair stance to take. So overall, I think we can wait and see what role these guys fill. I don't think anything new has come out about Connor Prielipp, why they placed him on the taxi squad, what's going on there. But we'll definitely keep an eye on that. If you want more live updates, more, talk about what this means for the Twins, I'm sure Eric and I will be talking about it on Twitter. We'll also be talking about it next week. So if you want to hear, what happened with this whole setup, make sure you're listening in then. But yeah, super, super crazy. We got to love a good, 9:30 bombshell right after we finish recording.